Picture this. You're 35 years old, you've been married for 8 years, and you're sitting in your car in the driveway after another 12-hour workday. You don't want to go inside your own house. Your wife hasn't touched you in months. Your kids barely acknowledge your existence, and every conversation turns into a battle about something trivial. You work your arse off to provide for this family, yet somehow you're treated like an unwelcome guest in your own home. You ask yourself, how did I get here? I thought marriage was supposed to make me happy. I thought this was what success looked like. What if I told you that this scenario isn't an exception, it's the norm? What if I told you that the modern institution of marriage has been systematically designed to destroy men's happiness, drain their resources and eliminate their authority? And what if I told you that the smartest thing you could do as a man in today's world is to never get married at all? Today, I'm going to reveal the brutal truth about why marriage is a losing proposition for men in the 21st century. I'm going to show you how society has transformed marriage from a partnership into a prison, and why the men who are avoiding marriage entirely are actually the smartest ones in the room. This isn't going to be comfortable to hear, especially if you're already married or planning to get married. But if you want to protect your happiness, your resources, and your sanity, you need to understand these truths. The men who ignore this advice are the ones who end up divorced, bankrupt, and broken. The men who understand what I'm about to tell you are the ones who maintain their freedom, their wealth, and their peace of mind. Pay attention, because what you're about to learn could save you from the biggest mistake of your life. Let me start with the most fundamental problem with modern marriage. It transforms men into worker drones. This isn't hyperbole. This is exactly what happens to the majority of married men in today's society. Here's the modern marriage formula. You wake up at 6 a.m., go to work for 8 to 10 hours, come home exhausted, and then you're expected to immediately switch into household helper mode. You're expected to clean, cook, do laundry, help with homework, and handle all the household maintenance. Meanwhile, there's no meal prepared for you, no appreciation for your efforts, and certainly no authority over any household decisions. You've essentially become a live-in employee in your own home. You're working 2 full-time jobs, one at the office and one at home, while receiving none of the benefits that marriages traditionally provided to men. Think about this logically. In the past, marriage was a partnership where both parties brought specific value to the relationship. The man provided resources and protection, while the woman provided domestic support and nurturance. Both roles were respected and necessary. But modern marriage has eliminated the female role while doubling the male role. You're still expected to be the primary breadwinner, but now you're also expected to be the co-housekeeper, co-parent, and emotional support system. Meanwhile, your wife is free to pursue her own career, her own interests, and her own goals without any obligation to support you in return. This is why so many married men report feeling exhausted, unappreciated, and resentful. They're not bad men. They're men who have been tricked into accepting a fundamentally unfair arrangement. Here's a psychological truth that society refuses to acknowledge. Men need respect, like they need oxygen. This isn't optional. It's hardwired into male psychology. When a man doesn't feel respected, he begins to deteriorate emotionally, mentally, and even physically. This is why men work so hard to achieve success in their careers. It's why they desire money, status symbols, and positions of authority. It's not about materialism, it's about earning respect from their peers and their environment. But here's the cruel irony. The very institution that's supposed to provide men with the most respect, marriage, has become the place where they receive the least respect. In a typical modern marriage, the man's opinions are dismissed, his decisions are questioned, and his authority is undermined at every turn. He's treated like a child who needs supervision rather than a partner whose judgment is valued. Let me give you a concrete example. A man works 60 hours a week to afford a nice home for his family. When he comes home and suggests that maybe they should reconsider a major purchase, his wife rolls her eyes and tells him he doesn't understand the family's needs. His decades of life experience and his role as the primary provider count for nothing in this conversation. This dynamic is so common that most people don't even recognize it as disrespectful. But imagine if you treated your boss this way at work, or if you treated a customer this way in business. You'd be fired immediately because everyone understands that respect is necessary for functional relationships. Yet somehow in marriage, disrespecting your husband has become not just acceptable, but expected. Women are encouraged to stand up to their husbands, to not let him control you, and to make your own decisions. All of this is code for disrespect your husband whenever you feel like it. Modern society has engaged in what I call the Authority Elimination Project, a systematic effort to remove all male authority from the household. This isn't accidental. It's been deliberately programmed into our culture through media, education, and social conditioning. Turn on any television show or movie and you'll see the same pattern repeated endlessly. The father is portrayed as a bumbling idiot who can't be trusted with basic decisions, while the mother is the smart, capable one who has to clean up his messes. This programming is so pervasive that most people don't even notice it anymore. The message is clear. Men are too stupid, too selfish, and too incompetent to have any real authority in their own homes. The woman must be the final decision maker on everything, from finances to child rearing to household management. But here's what this programming ignores. Authority isn't about domination, it's about responsibility. When you remove a man's authority, you're also removing his ability to take responsibility for his family's well-being. You're turning him into a passenger in his own life. This creates a psychological paradox that destroys men's mental health. They're held responsible for their family's financial security, but they're not allowed to make the financial decisions. They're expected to protect their family, but they're not allowed to set the rules that keep the family safe. They're supposed to be the head of household in name only, with no actual power to lead. This is why so many married men report feeling helpless and frustrated. They're being held accountable for outcomes they have no control over. It's like being told you're the CEO of a company, but you're not allowed to make any executive decisions. From a purely logical standpoint, modern marriage offers men no incentives and massive risks. Let's break down the cost-benefit analysis: companionship, which you can get from dating; regular sex, which statistically decreases dramatically after marriage; having children, which you can have without marriage; social approval, which lasts about 5 minutes; 50% of your assets if the marriage fails; potential alimony payments for years or decades; loss of authority in your own home; decreased sexual intimacy; increased stress and responsibility; limited freedom and flexibility; potential loss of access to your children if divorced. When you look at this objectively, what rational man would sign up for this deal? You're essentially agreeing to give up your freedom, your authority, and potentially half your wealth in exchange for what exactly? The traditional benefits of marriage, domestic support, sexual exclusivity, social stability, have been systematically eliminated, while all the costs and risks have been amplified. It's like agreeing to buy a car that comes with no engine, no warranty, and a payment plan that lasts forever. This is why marriage rates are plummeting among educated, successful men. They're not afraid of commitment. They're smart enough to recognize a bad deal when they see one. One of the most devastating aspects of modern marriage is the widespread phenomenon of sexless marriages. Statistics show that anywhere from 20 to 40% of marriages are essentially sexless, with couples having intimate relations less than 10 times per year. Think about the psychological impact of this on men. You commit your life to one woman, giving up all other options, and then she gradually withdraws the very thing that motivated you to make that commitment in the first place. This isn't just about physical needs. It's about feeling desired and appreciated. When your wife stops showing sexual interest in you, it sends a clear message that you're not attractive, not desirable, and not worth the effort. It's a form of rejection that cuts to the core of male identity. But here's the cruel twist. You're not allowed to seek that validation elsewhere. You're trapped in a situation where your needs aren't being met, but you're forbidden from meeting them anywhere else. You're essentially sentenced to a life of sexual frustration and emotional rejection. Many men try to address this by communicating their needs, being more romantic, or even going to counselling. But these efforts rarely work because the underlying problem isn't communication. It's the fundamental structure of modern marriage that eliminates women's incentive to maintain attraction and effort. When women have complete security and know that their husband can't easily leave, they often stop putting in the effort that attraction requires. Why would they? They already have everything they want: financial security, social status, and emotional support, without having to maintain their end of the bargain. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of this situation is how thoroughly society has programmed both men and women to accept this dysfunctional arrangement. This programming begins in childhood and continues through every aspect of our culture. In schools, boys are taught that masculinity is toxic and that they need to suppress their natural instincts for leadership and authority. They're told that wanting respect is outdated and that they should be happy just to serve others without recognition. The media reinforces this programming by consistently portraying traditional masculinity as villainous and men who want authority as abusive. Any man who expects respect from his wife is labelled as controlling or misogynistic. Even our legal system has been designed to support this programming. Family courts almost always side with women in custody disputes. Divorce settlements favour women regardless of circumstances, and domestic violence laws are written in ways that assume men are always the aggressors. This programming is so effective that most men don't even realise they're being manipulated. They accept disrespect as normal, they apologise for having needs, and they feel guilty for wanting to be treated well in their own homes. The result is a generation of men who have been psychologically castrated. They go through life accepting less than they deserve because they've been convinced that expecting more makes them bad people. Here's a psychological truth that few people understand. Chronic disrespect creates clinical depression in men. This isn't just feeling sad, this is a serious mental health condition that can lead to suicide, addiction, and violent behaviour. When a man is consistently treated without respect, his brain begins to shut down. He loses motivation, energy, and hope. He starts to question his own worth and competence. Over time, this psychological abuse creates the same symptoms as major depression. This is why domestic violence statistics are so misleading. They focus on physical abuse while ignoring the psychological destruction that chronic disrespect causes. A man who is constantly belittled, dismissed, and undermined by his wife is experiencing abuse, even if she never lays a hand on him. The most tragic part is that society not only ignores this form of abuse, it encourages it. Women are taught that disrespecting their husbands is empowerment, and that men who want respect are fragile or insecure. But the reality is that disrespect is incredibly damaging to the human psyche. It's what drives men to extreme behaviours, addiction, and even violence. When you systematically destroy a man's sense of worth and dignity, you're playing with psychological dynamite. This is why so many married men report feeling depressed, anxious, and hopeless. They're not weak, they're human beings who are being subjected to psychological torture in their own homes. When men find themselves in these disrespectful, authorityless marriages, they typically respond in one of three ways: fight, flight, or freeze. Fight response. Some men try to assert their authority through conflict. They argue, demand respect, and try to establish boundaries. This usually backfires because society has labelled any attempt at male authority as abusive or controlling. These men often end up in divorce court being portrayed as the villain. Flight response. Other men simply leave. They walk away from the marriage, sometimes abandoning their children and responsibilities. Society condemns these men as deadbeats, but often they're just men who couldn't handle the psychological abuse.